Welcome everybody to the seasonal diet, eating what our ancestors ate when they ate it, like we were evolved to do. So seasonal diet tips for May, on to the next month now at the start. So at this time we're just about done with the winter and the real food scarcity, and things would have started to get a whole lot easier for our ancestors, okay? Of course it depends exactly where you're from. It was going to be lasting longer the winter in Scandinavia than it would in ancient Greece, for example, so, you know, the Greeks would have some more variety and choice of food at this time of year than in Scandinavia will. But there are a few general rules. We're pretty much out of the season of preserved foods no matter where you are, in the northern hemisphere at least. Okay, so any foods preserved in your ancestors' pantry, you know, the winter stores would be gone now. So, you know, the grains, the pickled foods, the jarred foods, the jams, or the salted or smoked meats, dried meats, that kind of thing, they would have been eating that all throughout the winter, and they would be pretty much all eaten up now. The pantry would be empty. Perfect timing, because things are starting to grow now. It would have been a long time of not eating anything freshly grown, but now we are going to be able to eat fresh things. So first thing, fresh herbs. This may be started a month or two ago, depending on where you are in the world. But yeah, we're talking things like early in season, like right after the winter, things like chives, mint, parsley, those kinds of things. But now, coming into May, pretty much all herbs are at least starting to grow. At least the most common ones are starting to grow and can be harvested most places in the world. Also, sprouting in about May time, you know, the late spring, early summer, would be the vegetables like the leafy greens, okay? We're talking spinach, kale, lettuce, collard greens, arugula, all kinds of things like that, like these light leafy green vegetables. Also things like celery, interesting enough, in many places can grow as early as the late spring, and they can be harvested basically from now, spring, all the way into the fall, depending on the climate you're in, as always. But they are first in full swing now, and they would have been a big part of your ancestors' diets in many places in the year at this time. We also have a few mushrooms that come into season. Most mushrooms come around during the fall, but there are some great ones now that grow before the soil heats up and gets towards the summertime. Well, the soil is still a little bit cool and moist. Also, we're starting to get, finally, into the earliest fruits. It would have been a long time, and maybe 6 months, 9 months even in some places, with no fresh fruits growing. Again, depending on where you are. There are some winter fruits in some place in the world, but for the most part, not too much fruit throughout the winter. But now we're going to get to start eating fruit again, and it's the small things that have grown already by the time we get to like May. So we're talking raspberries, blackberries, those small wild strawberries, those kinds of things grow in many places this early in the year. And also rhubarb, if you like that. That is one of the early fruits as well. I love it. If your ancestors are a little bit closer to the Mediterranean-like climates, warmer places, you might also see some tree fruits growing and be able to harvest at that time, like the apples, apricots, peaches, plums, citrus, those kinds of things. But if you're from the north of Europe, most of those tree fruits are not going to start growing for a few more months, if any at all, okay? So, with all that I spoke about, that's plenty of micronutrients, and that's plenty of carbs. What about the protein? What do we do for the protein? Well, we're still not eating too much livestock. Our ancestors would have been caring for the animals all winter, and they have now just turned them out to graze freely starting in the spring, so they wouldn't have ate a whole ton of their own livestock at the time. But we are still getting into some more meat than we might have eaten in the past couple months. One of these things is calf veal. You know, it doesn't sound exactly nice or fair that the calf is born just a few months ago and already we are slaughtering it to eat, but it's just something humans did. There is tradition in the late spring, early summer. Calf veal is in the recipes of a lot of traditional foods all around Europe. We also can be eating some wild-caught animals that our ancestors would have had access to. Rabbit is probably the #1 thing, if they were able to trap those, and those are in a top season and in a whole bunch of spring dishes, all places where rabbits are native to, pretty much. Also, we can be looking at things like the hunted birds. They would be flying back into the area if they were away for the winter. Also, fish year-round if your ancestors live near the sea or river or lake. And seafood in general too. We're talking like shellfish type things, clams, oysters, lobsters, crab. There's a long tradition of foraging these things, and they are actually sometimes the most delicious in the spring, depending on where you are, while the water is still pretty cool. And also for the protein, plenty of animal products, eggs, milk, cheese, cream from the different livestock animals, goats, cattle, sheep, milk from all of those things, getting a good variety. Like our ancestors would have done today, we drink mostly just cattle milk, but our ancestors had a lot more variety in the milk and dairy products they got. So at this time of year, our ancestors would have definitely been able to increase the protein intake after a few months that they would have had very, very little of that. And then slowly, as the year goes out, as we get to the summer, we're increasing the protein little by little, peaking in the fall up to the midwinter when protein intake would have been the highest. As always, showing here monthly physique updates to see how the body changes eating seasonally. I actually had a competition a couple weeks ago where I had to weigh just 93 kilos, so that's really the lowest I ever get. And it's been a lot of carbs in the late winter and early spring if we're eating seasonally, so I am definitely feeling pudgy and a bit skinny fat, feeling deflated and not happy with the body at all. But I'm already on the way back, weighing 97 kilos now at the start of May, and I hope to be 100 kilos, but a lean 100 kilos as we get to the middle of the summer, and then goal, as usual, like I try to do, I try to be a husky 105 kilos plus by the time we get to the winter. So let's see how it goes, and just a little tip, don't worry if you're following the seasonal diet. Don't worry if you look like shit now. It's normal to feel a little pudgy. It's normal to feel deflated muscles. We're not having a lot of protein the past couple months and lots of carbs. We're going to be deflated. We're going to be skinny fat. We're not going to look good. But this is pretty much the worst our body is supposed to look for the whole year. So be patient, keep at it, keep at your goals, get to the gym. Now is the time to focus and come back to the warm summer season, the abundant, plentiful foods there. So that's all for today. Let us know, do you guys have any traditional recipes? Do you change your diet at all at this time of year? Speak to you next month when we will do seasonal diet updates for June.